Tom Cameron Swayze.
Brett Hundley. David Brainerd. John Chen.
Tom Brokaw.
Aftershocks and chaos after that powerful earthquake off the Indonesian coast. Tonight, the first dramatic pictures of a tiny island that's been devastated. Oil for food, the man in charge at the UN defiant after new criticism of him and his son over corruption in Iraq. Higher authority, a rapist and killer gets off death row because the jury consulted the Bible. Tonight, some are asking what's wrong with that. And a bumpy ride for American car companies. Sales keep falling further behind the Japanese. Why can't the U.S. compete?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. There was no tsunami, and that was a relief to the world after yesterday's quake off the island of Sumatra. But as we come on the air tonight, the estimated death toll still hovers between 1,000 and 2,000. Buildings have been destroyed, and tonight there is a massive new relief effort underway in a far-off part of the world that is still recovering from the last time the earth shook this badly, and where for a time today aftershocks were averaging 1 an hour. And we begin here tonight with NBC's Ned Colt on the island of Sumatra.
Today, Nias, the island surfers call a paradise, looked more like a battle zone.
The idea then was, with Iraq under UN sanctions, Saddam Hussein should be allowed to sell some of Iraq's oil to buy food and medicine for innocent Iraqis, mostly children. It became known as the Oil for Food program. It was run by the UN, but we later learned that Saddam skimmed billions of dollars from it. Did the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan know about the corruption? Today, a new report cleared him of wrongdoing, but also criticized him for not adequately investigating his own son's conflicts of interest. We get more now from NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Under fire, Washington.
In Iraq today, what was supposed to be only the second meeting of the new National Assembly disintegrated instead into a shouting match. It all started routinely enough, but before long there were outbursts and then walkouts, then a 3-hour delay, and then the live feed on Iraqi television was abruptly cut off. NBC News correspondent Richard Engel has had the dangerous assignment of reporting from Iraq for the last 2 years. He is heading back there in just a few days, but tonight he is here with us to give us some more context about where things stand politically and otherwise. Richard, let's begin with what went wrong there today.
Brian, I think it's pretty clear that Iraq is now facing a political crisis. 2 months since the elections, there's still no government. The politicians are trying to answer the very fundamental, difficult questions about the role of Islam in society, how much power the states will have versus the central government, and how the oil will be distributed among the Shiites, Sunnis, and Kurds. And they're trying to do this before empowering politicians to carry out the policies, and they've been unable to do that.
For a long time, the worry was civil war, and now it seems to be shifting to a concern over it just kind of dissolving under its own weight. Do you share that?
Yes, there have been increasing ethnic violence in Iraq, and you see more often it's Sunnis who are killing Shiites and then some Shiite militias who are carrying out assassinations against Sunni politicians and religious leaders. But more often, increasingly, Iraqis are concerned that the country could just fall apart and collapse to its component parts, a Shiite entity in the south with close relations to Iran, a failed Sunni entity in the south, in the central of the country, and a Kurdish, potentially destabilizing region in the north.
You were kind enough to speak to the NBC News staff today about life day to day in Iraq, and at that gathering I asked you, and I'll ask you again tonight, what would happen if you, as a Western citizen, a journalist, went out into one of the main drags in Baghdad, Haifa Street, well-known avenue, without body armor, without a security detail, in a few days when you return? What was your answer?
I don't think it would matter how many security guards I had with me. I don't think I'd make it more than 100 steps down Haifa Street before someone seeing a Westerner, seeing a vulnerable target, would pick me up and throw me into a car and kidnap me.
That may say a lot about the state of security in the capital city. It leads us to wish you safe travels as you return. Richard Engel, thank you. We learned late today that Johnnie Cochran, perhaps the most famous attorney in this country, has died in Los Angeles. NBC's Ron Allen, who covered the O.J. Simpson trial, is in Los Angeles with more on the life and death of Johnnie Cochran. Ron, good evening.
Good evening, Brian.
Cochran's family and his firm have just released a statement confirming Johnnie Cochran's death, saying in part the world has lost not only a legendary attorney, but an outstanding humanitarian. They confirm he died of a brain tumor at his home at 12:30 p.m. local time. Cochran, of course, will best be remembered for his defense of O.J. Simpson in Simpson's criminal trial. For Cochran, it was the high point of a career built in large part on police brutality cases, after beginning as a lawyer in the L.A. District Attorney's Office. Following the Simpson case, Cochran became a legal icon, especially in the African-American community, revered for his colorful and dramatic courtroom arguments. For example, there was this memorable line from the Simpson trial.
Do the right thing, remembering that if it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Cochran's other famous clients included Michael Jackson, truck driver Reginald Denny, who was attacked during the Los Angeles riots, and Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy. Cochran was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, the great-grandson of a slave. He grew up here in Los Angeles, where he built his practice. The family says that they were most proud of his work in the community, giving a voice to those who needed to be heard. Brian?
Johnnie Cochran, again, 67 years old. Ron Allen, thank you for that report from Los Angeles. There is new research out tonight from the IRS on unpaid taxes in this nation, and the amount is huge, more than $300 billion a year. That is about the same amount as the federal government spends on Medicare. People who underreport their income are the biggest culprits. The IRS only manages to collect about $55 billion a year in unpaid taxes after audits and late payments are taken into account. On Wall Street today, another down day. The Dow lost just under 80 points. NASDAQ was off almost 19 points. And up next this Tuesday night, NBC News In Depth. A man convicted of a brutal crime, his death sentence overturned. What did the Bible have to do with it? And later, big problems with the big three automakers in the U.S. And the question, why aren't more Americans buying American? We're back with NBC News In Depth, which is tonight about juries, justice, and religion. If you've ever served on a jury, you may remember the instruction by the judge that outside materials are not allowed during deliberations. It is because of that rule that in Colorado tonight, a convicted killer who was sent to death row by a jury will serve a life sentence instead. As NBC News justice correspondent Pete Williams reports tonight, some say this decision is hostile to religion.
Robert Harlan's savage crimes began one winter night near Denver in 1994 when he ran a 25-year-old cocktail waitress, Rhonda Maloney.
And up next, another famous voice now in the fight to keep Terri Schiavo alive.
Brian Williams, brought to you in part by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
Accused of stealing. NBC Nightly News tomorrow.
The phrase of the day in Deerfield Beach, Florida was "don't go in the water." Hundreds of sharks making their annual spring migration north were spotted by news helicopters just 100 yards off the beach. These sharks are spinner sharks, and they're not considered dangerous to humans, though they are very dangerous to sardines and herring, which is what they're doing, chasing them all their way up the coast. In Texas tonight, a former high-ranking official of the Boy Scouts of America is charged with possessing and distributing child pornography. Douglas Smith worked for the organization for nearly 40 years. In a written statement, the Boy Scouts National Council says it was shocked to learn of the charge, but added that Smith, who coordinated programs with schools and churches, did not work directly with young people. In Virginia, evangelist Jerry Falwell is in critical condition on a ventilator tonight, but doctors say he is stable. Falwell, who is 71, was admitted to Lynchburg General Hospital late last night with trouble breathing. Falwell was hospitalized for nearly 2 weeks last month with pneumonia. Now to Terri Schiavo in her 12th day without a feeding tube. Her parents continued today to call for help to get the tube reattached, and they brought in reinforcements. From Florida tonight, here is NBC's Mark Potter.
The Reverend helped many protests.
Tonight that former Alabama Senator Howell Heflin has died. He was awarded the Silver Star as a Marine in World War II and came home to a career in public service. He was elected Chief Justice of Alabama's State Supreme Court and to the Senate in 1978. A Democrat, he served 3 terms and became an expert on Senate rules and a champion of Southern agriculture issues. He retired in 1997. Howell Heflin was 83 years old. years old. And a few newspapers this week noted the death of a man named Andrew Toti, but we thought it warranted a bit more attention tonight because of the many lives this one man saved over the years. He was the son of Italian immigrants who grew up to be a full-time inventor. He came up with a pull tab for canned drinks, an automated plucking machine for poultry, but his most famous invention was an inflatable vest for military pilots known to this day as the Mae West. Anyone who ever pulled down on those tabs knew right away why it was nicknamed for the chesty actress, and the Mae West saved the lives of countless Allied airmen, among them George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st president, who years later wrote the inventor to thank him. Andrew Toti died on March 20th at his home in Modesto, California. He was 89 years old. We're back with more right after this.
Hardballs online, MSNBC.com.
It wasn't all that long ago when an American car in the driveway was the American ideal, but even the Detroit automakers now admit, looking back, American cars weren't always the best. So in marched Japan, and Detroit got a huge wake-up call. Now, however, everyone agrees the quality of American cars is better. So the question, why are sales lagging behind? Some answers tonight from NBC News Chief Financial Correspondent Ann Thompson.
Detroit's cars of the future generate inroads with SUVs. Japan now has its sights set on Detroit's last big profit center, pickup truck. News, New York.
And that is NBC Nightly News for this Tuesday, the 29th day of March 2005. I'm Brian Williams. We'll look for you right back here tomorrow evening. Good night.
News is a presentation of NBC News. More Americans watch NBC News than any other news organization in the world.